All right, we are going to start creating our practice chalk pastel drawing together. And we are looking at kind of a landscape here with a sunsetty sky, mountains, and then closer up we have trees. The reason I picked this picture for us to do is because it's going to involve layering colors, and it's also going to involve blended and non-blended edges. So let's go ahead and get started. And just like any drawing or painting, it's going to be helpful for us to work from the back forward. So I'm going to start by taking kind of like a grayish color as the base of my sky, because if I look at the farthest back sky area, it's more gray, and all of that lighter colored stuff is like on top. So I'm going to add that in, and I'm just going to blend that a little bit with my finger because this sky part would probably have a smoother texture. I wouldn't want to blend if I was doing something that was more rough, and we'll talk more about that later. So I've started with that background sky color, and now I'm going to come in with a bit of a yellow, and I'm going to layer that over the bottom of the sky and kind of warm that up. And again, I'm going to use my finger and smooth it out. I'm just paying attention to where my colors are in my sky, like adding in as many different colors as I can see. So I can see that towards the very top there is some blue, and I'm going to lay that in as well. And then again, blend that with my fingers, being careful to use a clean finger. And then to soften all of that up, I'm going to use a bit of white and just layer over the top of it. Now, since I'm using filling a big space, I used all my pastels on their edges, not on the ends. Now I'm going to come in with more of a golden color and start adding in with more the end of the pastel where I see some of these stronger clouds. And then I can tell that there's a little bit of kind of like some orangey stuff layered on top. And so with just really light pressure, I'm going to add a bit of orange where I see that in my picture. And I don't want to blend this all away the way that I blended my very, very background colors. So this time when I blend, I could either use a new finger, making sure it's clean. I could use a small piece of paper towel, kind of wad it up, or I could even use a blending stick like I would normally use in a drawing, just to sort of combine those colors together. But I'm not trying to blend too much and get completely rid of my orange. So I have the start of some clouds now. Now, their clouds also have like a purpley kind of situation, pinky purpley sort of layer to them. So I'm going to take some of those colors and I'm going to add in where I see the darker parts of the clouds. And this might look too dark at first, but that's okay because I can always come back in and brighten it up. So here I'm just using the edge of the pastel, just the corner. And I'm using kind of like a light to medium pressure to get the amount of coverage that I want. There's quite a bit of like darker purpley spots in here, so I'm trying to get as many of those as I can while also working a little bit quickly because I know this is just practice. Now that looks awfully dark, so I'm going to come in and brighten that up with some pink. I see a little bit of pinkish tone kind of in those clouds as well. So I'm going to add some pink kind of over my purple. It's going to show the pinkish tone, but it's also going to just brighten up the purple, and it's going to blend with the purple a little bit too. Since I'm not using really hard pressure, the pink is letting some purple kind of come through. So that's what I want. I want to still be able to see a little bit of both colors. I can also add pink where there's no purple underneath if I just want like some warmer areas. And again here, I'm using just kind of the corner of my pastel, not the big edge, because I'm doing smaller areas of my paper. Now, anywhere that I want to soften that up, I can take my blending stick and kind of go over that again. But really, I'm making sure that I'm not over blending. If I do that, it's all just going to become messy. If I do realize that I over blend a little bit, I might need to come back in with more of my pastel and make that a little bit stronger again. I can even use my blending stick in sort of like circular motions to create that cloudy kind of shape. Now looking at this, I'm not happy with the top above the clouds. I think I need more white kind of in this middle section. So I'm gonna go again with my white and I'm gonna push harder. And I see how that brightens that up in the middle. I'm also gonna add a little more white up towards the top here. And chalk pastel is kind of like paint in this way. Like anything I'm not happy with, I can just keep covering. I'm gonna come in with a little bit of like a cooler blue and add some of that into the top. And I'm gonna add just a little purple too. I feel like this blue isn't quite cool enough. So I'm gonna layer the blue and the purple to mix those colors together. And then with a cleanish finger, I'm gonna blend that in. Just kind of bringing a little more blue into my sky. I can even take my white over top of this to kind of soften it, but still be able to see some of that blue. I also have kind of some blue and some purple up here that I feel like I missed. So I'm gonna add that in now. And then I'm gonna go over that with my white as well, just to make sure it's all blended. White can be another tool for blending aside from like fingers, paper towel, blending sticks, that sort of thing. I'm gonna add a little more purple up in this corner and then I'm gonna kind of leave my sky alone for right now. Now I'm gonna work on the next part kind of coming forward, which I would say is the mountains. And those mountains are mostly a kind of rich, darker blue. And then there's a lot of fog, so that's gonna mean I'm gonna probably add some white. I'm gonna start by just filling in sort of this triangle where my mountains will go with blue, using the side of my pastel because I'm really just trying to fill the space right now. And I'm gonna come up a little bit into my sky so it looks like my mountains are in front of my sky. Now I'm gonna focus on using the very corner of a pastel and getting a clean, hard edge to show the shape of the mountains that I see. Kind of that silhouette against the sun. And I'm making sure I'm drawing this over my sky so it really does look like my sky is behind. Looking at my picture to try and get close to the shape. And then if I look at my picture, I can see that this is a really strong line, not very blended. However, I notice there's more orange up towards the top of my mountain, so I'm gonna add that into my sky before I get too much further. I'm gonna blend that a little bit carefully with a blending stick as well so I don't ruin the mountain line that I just created. All right, now I'm gonna come in with my blue again and I'm gonna carry it down a little bit into my mountains, making it a little bit richer coverage of my paper, not letting as much paper show through. To keep things lighter, I'm not gonna let the paper show through. Instead, I'm gonna come back in with lighter colors. So I'm not gonna worry about going too dark right now. I just wanna make this color nice and rich. Using just the edge of my pastel. All right, Now I'm gonna come in with a bit of a lighter blue, and I'm gonna start filling in some of this area just to make it a little bit hazy. And then I'm gonna see what I need to brighten up even more. I'm gonna blend that a bit with my finger and make sure I'm getting good coverage on my paper. And I think I need to now add some white over top to make it look even foggier. But I'm not gonna carry that up all the way because I like my mountains dark at the top like my picture. All right, now I'm gonna come back in with this darker blue and I'm gonna add some of the other layers of mountains that I see just with the corner of my chalk. So I'm gonna kind of choose the lines that are most obvious at first to add in, trying to sort of mimic the shapes that I see. And then I'm gonna bring a little bit of that dark blue down from the line that I created to blend it in just by layering. I don't wanna blend the top of the line. I want that to stay a little bit sharper so it looks like the defined top of a mountain, but I can blend the bottom part just a little bit. And if you run out of clean fingers, you might need to take a break and wash your hands here. Now I'm gonna add in a few more of the little ridges that I see. And again, blend that down so it looks like it goes kind of hazy at the bottom. Pretty happy with that. And then I'm gonna add just a little bit more of a ridge here, turning my pastel over so I find another sharp edge and blending just the bottom of that ridge, not the top. I'm gonna keep adding little ridges until I feel like I've added what's in my picture, or at least most of it. I'm just using the same technique of blending the underneath part, but keeping that top line sharp. Now I'm gonna come in with some gray because I think everything looks a little bit too bright. So I'm just gonna layer some gray where my light and dark blue kind of meet. And that's gonna help my blending as well as to adjust the color to be more like what it is in my picture. I think that helped the tone a little bit, but it's a little bit dark now. So I think I'm gonna go in and add some white. And this time I'm gonna use more the end of my pastel so I can control where the white's going a little bit better. And I'm gonna try and concentrate the white where I see the brightest parts of my picture, kind of right above those dark lines. If I go over any of my dark blue lines with the white, I might need to just come back in with that blue one more time, but that's okay, I can do that. Pastels are all about layering and really being patient. I got a little bit into my line there. Just using a little more pressure where I feel like I need a brighter white. And I'm gonna go back in with my blue, and I'm not gonna blend these lines at all. I wanna keep these nice and kind of hard edged. Part of what makes chalk pastel really beautiful is when you have a contrast of a hard and soft edge. So if I over blend, I'm not gonna get those hard edges that I'm looking for. Now I'm gonna kind of step back, look at the whole picture, make sure I'm on the right track. I think I am, and I'm gonna focus more on this area with the trees now. I would say this needs kind of like a medium green base. So I'm gonna take a green pastel on its side and just sort of fill all that in. And I'm gonna cover up a little bit of my mountains and a little bit of my sky because I really wanna show that these trees are in front of all that. Like a white blank space in between, it would not look like these were in front. It would look like they were separate from the mountains. I'm gonna go ahead and blend this in a little bit with my finger just to get a smoother base coat, and then I'm gonna add quite a lot of texture and hard edges on the top. Tap this off. All right, so I have kind of a green base, and that looks way too green. That doesn't really work. So I'm gonna look for now where the darker areas are, like the darker kind of green trees and plants. And I'm gonna add in, I think I might use this like really dark blue actually to kind of like add in some darker areas. And then I'll layer my green again over top and my blue again. So even though I'm not trying to make a blue color, it's just helping me to see where some of the darker, more shadowy areas are gonna be when I add more textured trees. Keep layering my green over the top, just lightly to blend those colors. And I may take just a touch of black to add some darkness into some certain areas. I'm not worried about individual trees at this point. I'm just trying to create lighter and deeper areas of color. So I've got some variety in my base coat. Now to finish all of this off, I'm gonna add some individual trees. And now I'm gonna come in with like a lighter green, and I'm gonna look for where the lighter areas of the trees are. And I'm gonna just kind of scribble almost with the very edge of my pastel. And I'm not going to blend this light green because I really want it to show up. I really want to be able to see where some of these lighter leafy areas are. And if my green doesn't look light enough, I can come in even with like a yellow and add even more highlights there. So I'm going to take some time now and just add in some of the lighter tree bits that I see. And then I'll come back in and balance it all out later. Now I'm gonna come back in with a bit of my regular green that I started with, and I'm gonna add a little more texture into where some individual trees might be. So I'm gonna kind of create that texture with little scribbly marks. This is called scumbling, and I am not going to blend this. I want this texture to show. My paper is not big enough that I can really draw all the individual trees that exist in this drawing or in this photograph. So I'm just gonna add as much texture as I can so that I'm implying that there are trees there without drawing every single one. Now I'm gonna bring my lighter green in, do some layering over that darker green to create some transition between those colors, blending just by layering. Tap off some of my extra chalk. I'm gonna come in with a little bit of blue down here because I feel like the trees all sort of look blue. There's like this blue fog over them. And again, I'm not gonna blend in all of these marks, but I am gonna come in with, I think, a gray. I think that would kind of help my color a bit. Make it look a little bit more hazy. Oh yeah. Kind of go back and forth between my blue and my gray in this section. All right, now I'm gonna work very sparingly at the end with my black, and I'm just gonna use the very corner of it, and I'm not going to blend it. And that is gonna give me some of these individual trees that stand up in front of the sky. I'm starting with very minimal lines because if I make too much, I can't really come back from using black. It's just gonna be a mess. And again, I'm not blending these at all. I'm gonna make the smaller tree that goes right over here. I've got another tree that comes up into the sky kind of here. Just being really careful not to use too much black. And this is why I've done the background first. If I drew these trees first and then I had to draw around them in black, can you imagine? I would go nuts. Got another kind of treetop here that I can see. And then there's sort of some leafiness and a few spots kind of down here, over in this area, and more towards the corner, kind of towards the edge of my paper. Now I don't want the black towards the edge here to stand out so much, so I'm gonna come back in with my green again, just layer over top of that so it softens it just a little. But I'm still not touching those individual trees. I've kept those textures kind of intact. I'm gonna add just a bit of a dark edge along the line here with the lightest amount of black, and then I'm gonna go over that in green so it's not too stark against my other colors. But I do wanna show the separation between the front and back trees. And I'm gonna add just a bit more black here to show that this is in front of those bluish mountains. But I'm gonna add a little blue this time over this black so it doesn't look too out of place. Tap off my extra. Now I could spend some time, if I wanted to, adding in kind of additional yellow highlights and like light green highlights without blending, so that I'm gonna get even more dimension and show even more kind of like individual trees down through this area. But overall, this is pretty much it. I've at least captured what my photo looks like. And I've used a lot of the techniques that we learned about for chalk pastel. So go ahead, go back into the video if you need to, take your time and do the best you can to recreate this image, also exploring some of those techniques.